Every house on Pine Street glittered with lights, garlands of red and green bulbs looped around railings, giant inflatable snowmen wobbled on lawns, and projections of dancing snowflakes skated across rooftops. It was a symphony of festive cheer. A vibrant testament to the holiday spirit that had taken over the entire neighborhood. Every house, that is, except one. Number 12, right at the end of the street. Mrs. Calder's house. For as long as anyone could remember, or at least for the last 5 years, Mrs. Calder's porch had stayed dark every Christmas. The wreaths and reindeer lights that once adorned her home now sat in dusty boxes in the attic, untouched since her husband, George, had passed away. The neighbors understood. Grief has its own timetable, and sometimes the brightest holidays can cast the longest shadows. They'd still drop off cookies and cards, offering a gentle wave if they saw her through the window. But no one ever pushed. Pine Street respected her quiet sorrow. This year, however, something was different. On the 1st of December, as the first string of lights on the opposite house blinked to life, a small, solitary glow appeared in Mrs. Calder's front window. It wasn't much, just a single, flickering candle perched on the windowsill. It was so faint that at first, people thought it was just a reflection. But it was there, a tiny pinprick of light against the deep darkness of her home. No one knew who had lit it. The kids whispered theories on their way to school. Maybe it was a ghost, a friendly Christmas ghost. The adults were just as puzzled. Had Mrs. Calder finally decided to acknowledge the season, even in this small way? They watched and waited. The next night, the light returned, but it wasn't alone. A second candle had joined the first, their two small flames dancing side by side in the cold winter air. The soft, warm light they cast seemed to push back the darkness just a little bit more. Each evening, the ritual continued. A new candle would appear, adding its gentle light to the growing collection. 3 candles became 5, 5 became 10. The single window began to shimmer, a quiet contrast to the flashing, multicolored displays that surrounded it. The neighbors were captivated. The nightly lighting of the candles became a neighborhood event. Families would pause on their evening walks. Kids would point from car windows, all watching as the glow in Mrs. Calder's window grew brighter, night by night. It wasn't a grand or flashy display, but it held a power all its own. It felt hopeful. By Christmas Eve, the entire windowsill was filled. A row of 24 candles stood shoulder to shoulder, their combined light casting a warm, inviting halo onto the porch and the snow-dusted lawn. The house no longer looked dark and empty. It looked serene, peaceful, as if it were holding a quiet, sacred secret. That night, a small group of neighbors, holding plates of gingerbread and steaming thermoses of hot chocolate, decided it was time. They walked up the unshoveled path and knocked gently on Mrs. Calder's door. They weren't sure what to expect. Maybe she wouldn't answer, but after a moment, the lock turned and the door creaked open. There stood Mrs. Calder, a soft shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes, which had so often seemed distant and sad, were shining with unshed tears. But she was smiling, a genuine, warm smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "Merry Christmas," one of the neighbors said softly, holding out a plate of cookies. "We saw your lights. They're beautiful." Mrs. Calder looked from their faces to the glowing window behind her. She took a deep breath, her smile widening. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little thick with emotion. "But I have a confession to make. I didn't light them." A puzzled silence fell over the small group. She continued, wiping a tear from her cheek. "The first one. It just appeared. I came downstairs one morning and there it was. A little white candle. I didn't know who left it. My first instinct was to blow it out. It felt wrong to have any light in this house at Christmas. She paused, looking at the flickering flames. But I couldn't. It was so small, so simple. So I just left it. The next day, another one was there beside it. And then another. She looked back at her neighbors, her eyes full of a profound realization. Every morning, I'd find a new one. I never saw who left them. But every night, I found I couldn't bring myself to extinguish them. I didn't light them, she repeated, her voice full of wonder. I just stopped blowing them out. The neighbors looked at each other, silent smiles passing between them. No one said a word about the small, anonymous deliveries made in the pre-dawn hours. Sometimes the spirit of Christmas doesn't arrive with a bang or a flash of fireworks. It doesn't need grand gestures or dazzling displays. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like a single candle on a dark windowsill. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give or receive is simply letting the light stay. Have you ever received a gift that seemed like nothing, but turned out to be everything? This is a story about a little boy named Leo and a Christmas gift that changed everything. It was Christmas Eve, and the air was thick with excitement and the scent of pine needles. Snow was falling gently outside, blanketing the world in a soft, quiet white. Inside, houses glowed with the warm light of Christmas trees, each one a beacon of family and joy. But in one small house, a young boy named Leo was feeling a little anxious. He watched his parents arranging beautifully wrapped presents under their tree. His heart sinking with each perfectly tied ribbon. Leo had no money, not a single penny to his name. And more than anything in the world, he wanted to give his little sister, Mia, a special Christmas present. Mia was his best friend, his partner in every adventure. He thought about all the things she wanted: a new doll, a shiny red bicycle, a book of fairy tales, but all of those things cost money he simply didn't have. He sat by the window, watching the snowflakes dance, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. He didn't want Mia to wake up on Christmas morning and find nothing from him. He had to do something. Then, his eyes landed on an empty showbox tucked away in a corner of his room. An idea, fragile and uncertain at first, began to form in his mind. It wasn't a doll, and it certainly wasn't a bicycle. But maybe, just maybe, it could be something even better. With a newfound sense of purpose, Leo grabbed the box. He found a roll of leftover wrapping paper from last year, a festive pattern of green and gold stars. It wasn't a very big piece, but if he was careful, it would be just enough. He laid the paper out on the floor and placed the empty box in the center. He folded the corners with meticulous precision, his small fingers working with intense concentration. Every crease was sharp, every edge perfectly aligned. He secured the paper with tiny pieces of tape, making sure it was smooth and seamless. Finally, he found a small, slightly crinkled red bow and stuck it right in the middle. When he was done, he held the box up. It looked perfect. It looked just like any other present under the tree. But Leo knew its secret. The box was completely, utterly empty. Or was it? As he looked at it, he started to fill it in his imagination. He filled it with the promise of piggyback rides in the park. He filled it with all the bedtime stories he would read to her, complete with silly voices for all the characters. He filled it with secret handshakes and inside jokes. He filled it with the sound of their shared laughter echoing through the house. He filled it with his promise to always be there, to be her big brother, no matter what. On Christmas morning, the house was buzzing with energy. Mia, her eyes wide with wonder, tore through her presents with squeals of delight. She got a new puzzle, a set of colorful markers, and a warm, fuzzy sweater. Then she saw it: the small, Perfectly wrapped box with the red bow. This one's from Leo, their mom announced, Mia carefully peeled back the tape and lifted the lid. She peered inside, her smile slowly fading into a frown. She turned the box upside down and shook it, nothing. She looked up at Leo, her brow furrowed in confusion. "There's nothing here," she said, her voice small and disappointed. Leo's heart did a little flip-flop. He knelt beside her and whispered, so only she could hear, "Oh, but there is. You just can't see it." Mia looked at him, her eyes questioning. "It's full of promises," he continued softly. "It is full of bike rides we'll take in the spring and forts we'll build out of blankets. It's full of all the laughter we haven't laughed yet. It's full of me, always being there for you." Mia's expression changed. The frown disappeared, replaced by a slow, dawning understanding. She looked from Leo's earnest face back to the empty box. She clutched it to her chest, hugging it tightly as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Then she threw her arms around Leo's neck and hugged him even tighter. Years went by. They grew up. Leo kept his promises. They had countless bike rides and built dozens of blanket forts. Their lives were filled with the kind of laughter he had imagined. The empty box stayed on Mia's shelf, a silent reminder of that special Christmas. One day, when they were both adults, sitting together and reminiscing, Mia pointed to the old, faded box. "You know," she said, a gentle smile on her face, "of all the presents I've ever received in my entire life, that one was the best. It was the best gift I ever got. Because sometimes the most valuable gifts aren't the ones you can hold in your hands, but the ones you hold in your heart. They're the gifts of time, of love, of presence. And those are the gifts that last a lifetime." Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more tales that warm the soul. Merry Christmas, and may your holidays be filled with the kinds of gifts that truly matter. I want to share a story with you, a simple little tale about a Christmas that almost wasn't, and the magic that sometimes arrives when we least expect it. Imagine a small town, the kind you see in old holiday movies, nestled in a valley with cozy houses and winding streets. All through December, the town held its breath, waiting. The air was crisp and cold, the calendar pages turned, but something crucial was missing. The shop windows were decorated with cotton ball flurries and sparkling tinsel. A hopeful imitation of the real thing, the town square's grand fir tree stood tall, its branches bare and dark against a clear, starry sky. Day after day, the forecast was the same, cold and clear. The children, especially, felt the disappointment growing. They'd pressed their noses against frosty window panes, searching the skies for any sign of a grey cloud, any hint of a single drifting flake. They'd made their lists for Santa, decorated cookies, and sung carols. But the backdrop to all their festive preparations was just brown. The grass in the park was stiff with frost, but stubbornly visible. As Christmas Eve arrived, a quiet resignation settled over the town. The usual buzz of last-minute excitement was softer this year. Families gathered, shared meals, and lit their fires, but when the children were tucked into bed, their dreams were not of a winter wonderland. The grown-up sighed, looking out at the unchanging night, and began to accept that this would simply be a different kind of Christmas. Then something shifted. Right as the old clock in the town hall began to chime for midnight, a profound silence fell. It was a quiet so deep it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. The wind stopped, every distant sound seemed to fade away, and in that perfect, silent moment, it began. One single, perfect snowflake drifted down, catching the lamplight like a tiny, floating diamond, then another and another. Soon, a gentle, steady cascade was falling from the dark sky. It wasn't a blizzard, Not a wild storm, but a soft, hushed descent. The flakes were large and delicate, piling up like powdered sugar on the rooftops and fence posts. It fell as if it were a blessing, a quiet answer to a town's collective wish. All through the night, it snowed, blanketing the world in a pristine layer of white. When morning came, the first rays of sun broke over the hills, and the town was transformed. It was breathtaking. Every roof wore a thick, sparkling blanket. The air itself felt different, cleaner, newer, full of a quiet joy. Children woke up and gasped, scrambling to their windows to see the miracle. Their disappointment from the night before had vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated wonder. Something magical happened that wasn't just about the snow. As people emerged from their homes, bundled in scarves and coats, the change was visible on their faces. The town baker, a man usually known for his stern demeanor, threw open his doors and offered a warm loaf of bread to everyone who passed by, completely free of charge. Strangers who normally would have walked past each other with a polite nod now stopped, smiled genuinely, and wished each other a Merry Christmas, their breath misting in the cold air. Laughter echoed as the first snowball of the season was thrown in the town square. The snow had brought more than just beauty, it had brought a sense of connection, of shared happiness. By noon, the sun was high and warm, and the beautiful snow began to melt. The magical white blanket receded, dripping from the eaves and turning the streets to slush. By late afternoon, it was almost all gone, as if it had only been a dream. But it wasn't a dream. The snow was gone, yes, but the kindness it had sparked remained. The baker kept his door propped open for the rest of the day, chatting with neighbors. The smiles between strangers didn't fade with the melting snow. The warmth of that morning lingered in the air, a feeling of community and goodwill that lasted long after the last patch of white had disappeared. The town learned a simple lesson that Christmas, sometimes the most beautiful gifts are the ones that don't last forever, but change us for the better long after they're gone. Thank you so much for listening to this story with me today. I hope it brought a little bit of warmth and magic to your day. Once upon a time, nestled in a cozy little house with a chimney that puffed out perfect smoke rings, lived a little girl named Lily. Every Christmas Eve, without fail, Lily would press her nose against the frosty window pane, her breath fogging up the glass, and search the dark velvet sky. She wasn't looking for Santa's sleigh, not at first. She was looking for the Christmas star. It was always the first star to appear, the brightest and boldest, hanging high above the tallest pine tree at the edge of town. Her grandfather had told her it was a special star, a wishing star, but only on Christmas Eve. So, every year, she'd make her wish. When she was 5, she squinted her eyes tight and whispered, "I wish for a teddy bear with a red bow, bigger than me." The next morning, a giant, fluffy bear sat under the tree, its red bow gleaming. When she was 7, she wished for a perfect snow day. The kind with flakes so big and soft you could catch them on your tongue, and on Christmas morning, the world was a blanket of pristine white, perfect for snow angels and epic snowball fights. When she was 9, she wished for a touch of magic, just a little sign that the stories were real. That year, a single, shimmering reindeer bell appeared on her nightstand. With no explanation of how it got there, it rang with a sound so pure. It made her heart ache with joy. Year after year, the Christmas star seemed to grant her wishes. But this year, as Lily turned 10, something felt different. She'd had a tough year. Her best friend had moved away, she'd struggled with math, and sometimes she just felt a little bit lonely. That night, as she stood at the window, she looked up at the familiar, brilliant star. It pulsed with a steady, comforting light, like a celestial heartbeat. She took a deep breath, and instead of wishing for a new bike or the latest video game, she wished for something she'd never wished for before. Please, she whispered to the star, her voice barely audible. Please just stay. Don't go away after tonight. She stayed by the window for what felt like hours, watching. The other stars seemed to dance and shift in the sky. But her star, the Christmas star, remained perfectly still, a single, unwavering point of light directly above the pine tree. A sense of peace washed over her, and she finally drifted off to sleep right there in her armchair, a small smile on her face. The next morning was a flurry of presents and Christmas carols, but every so often, Lily would glance out the window. The star was gone, of course, lost in the brightness of the morning sun, but the feeling it left behind, that stayed. The years rolled on. Lily grew up. She went to college, got a job in a big city, and built a life for herself. The city lights were so bright. You could barely see any stars at all. Life wasn't always easy. There were deadlines, disappointments, and days when she felt just as tired and lonely as she did when she was 10. Christmas became more about travel plans and gift lists than about magic. One Christmas Eve, many years later, she found herself back in her childhood home. It was late, and everyone else was asleep. Feeling a pull of nostalgia, she walked to her old bedroom window and looked out. The sky was clear and dark, a rare gift. And there it was. High above the ancient pine tree, a single star burned brighter than all the rest. She smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. She didn't press her nose against the glass or whisper a wish. She didn't need to. The star wasn't fixed in the sky anymore. She knew that it would fade with the morning light, just as it always had. But as she stood there, watching its steady glow, she realized the truth of her childhood wish. The star itself hadn't stayed. It couldn't. But what it represented, that spark of belief, that flicker of optimism in the dark, that feeling that even on the loneliest night, you're not truly alone, that had stayed. It had become a part of her. The Christmas star had taught her that the most powerful magic isn't about getting what you wish for, but about holding on to hope long after the wish is made, and that was a gift that never, ever faded. Thank you so much for watching. If this story warmed your heart, please consider subscribing for more tales to brighten your day. Merry Christmas, and may you always find your star.